Let's go back to talking about Israeli innovation. Anyway, everyone understood the English, right? To what extent has it innovated? Conservatively speaking, it's really extraordinary. Israel is known as the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, with the highest number of startups per capita in the world. The amount of human rights venture capital is 28 times that of the United States, and the number of companies listed on Nasdaq is only second to the United States and China. How is it done? In fact, at first, the Israeli government's idea was simple: to encourage young people to start businesses by providing funding or interest-free loans to these startup companies. The Israeli government initiated a large wave of investments in 1991. At first, they were splendid and stylish, but unexpectedly, after a few years, these startups fell apart. It took a big round of questioning from the government to realize that it's not enough to just have initial capital. Even if there are more rounds of ABCDFG needed, the government can't keep injecting money. He is also tight on hand. Moreover, the government also doesn't have the ability to filter out who can do it and who can't, which is indeed too difficult for the government. So they finally realized that they had to establish a very good business environment that could continuously select and invest in these good startups, which would drive the development of the entire investment industry. We might need those excellent European and American companies to invest in us and drive us. Hey, you think it's beautiful, right? You say that professional investors from Sydney overseas are not like any country, but what's the problem? You are like professional investors overseas. They demand returns, right? One after another. Consider back then, Israel had just experienced hyperinflation, and there were risks of conflicts everywhere. Moreover, there were abundant investment opportunities in places like Mexico and Southeast Asia at that time. Who would invest in Israel for no reason, right? To put it bluntly, you gotta show enough sincerity to let these investors internationally to send the money over. So the Israeli government, after meticulous analysis, launched a project in 1993 called Yinsma, which can be said to have changed the fate of the nation. In Hebrew, this word means a new beginning. The government then allocated $100 million, $20 million of which was directly invested into some high-tech companies, and the remaining $80 million was divided into 10 parts, establishing 10 funds. Each fund started with $20 million, where the government contributed $8 million, making up 40%, and foreign capital made up the remaining 60%, that is $12 million. The government is really offering explosive incentives to attract foreign investment. His condition is that you only need to participate in our YouTuber project if it makes money. You can not only take away your 60% of the income, but also buy the 40% of the shares of my government. I only charge you a little interest. What if I lose money on my investment? For overseas investors, this. It's like manna from heaven, right? What is the government aiming for by investing so much? It's not about the returns of those investment projects, but more about attracting these high-quality overseas investments to stimulate domestic investment and creation industries. As the saying goes, if you don't want to let your kids go, you can't catch the wolf. Israel's sincere YouTuber project has indeed achieved great results. Of course, there are some historical and environmental factors here that can't be entirely attributed to the government. We'll talk about this later, but the result is that Israel's entire entrepreneurial economy has been rapidly driven. The government has subsequently added second and third phase investments. What's in those 10 funds? There are 6 annualized investment returns that have exceeded 100%, doubling on average every year. Imagine the information of overseas investors. That is quite savvy. 100% annualized return. Thank you. A large number of investors flocked to Israel from 1992 to 2000. The number of VC funds in Israel reached 20. The number of foreign banks has grown from 1 to 513, and now there are over 6,000 in Israel. Mostly, these are high-tech companies in some new fields. Once the government saw this gear start to turn, they really began to withdraw and sell their shares from 98, as promised years ago. Some of you might be curious. You said that Israel is strong in technology and has many startup companies, but why haven't I heard of any big tech companies from Israel? Come, let me give you a few typical success stories. For instance, we mentioned in the past about NVIDIA's acquisition of the Israeli chip company Mellanox for $6.9 billion in 2020, and the tech company Mobile doing autonomous driving in 2007. Most of them were actually acquired by Intel for a whopping $15.3 billion, and they are mostly those to-be tech companies. It's about dozens of people developing a particularly powerful technology and selling it to Microsoft, Google, and the like for billions of dollars. Tech company. This is why we rarely hear about Israeli companies. Because those companies with great potential to become giants will soon be bought by those near-market giants, especially considering Israel's good relations with the United States. The American giants love buying Israeli tech companies. After all, Israel is quite distant from the market. The costs of developing a consumer-oriented approach are high. Those who invest in Israel are professional investors. They will surely not give up on money. They will definitely sell it to big companies. For example, a few years ago, there was a very famous vomit CN company in Israel. Doing GPS is a bit like Google Maps and AMAP software. The development momentum was very strong at the time, but then it was bought by Google for $1.3 billion. Both parties were very happy.
Mirror needs your support. Welcome to subscribe to Mirror.
Of course, Israel's research is strong. The government has indeed put a lot of effort. The simplest and most straightforward, he is really willing to spend money. Look at this. This is the ratio of the national research investment to GDP. China ranks second with 5%, while Israel also has 5%. And is way ahead of South Korea. Even in such a desert area with a severe shortage of water, its agriculture is still doing ridiculously well. He came up with a very advanced irrigation technology. You all spray water, right? Hey, I'll give you a cup. It saves more water than you and the crops grow well. Whether it's the Yuzma project that drives investment in the industry or government's investment in scientific research we discussed earlier, it only solves the issue of money. There is also a key issue we just skipped, which is the deep driving force of Israel's economic development, the people. You don't look at culture. Some characteristics, such as valuing education and working hard, are very similar to our East Asian culture. So Israeli education is also very developed. There are many good universities and so on. We won't expand on this in detail, but it's not over yet. The key difference with many East Asian cultures is that they value business and adventure in their culture. They are risk takers. For nearly 2,000 years, Jews have been a minority group in most parts of the world. Even faced with social ostracism, he could mostly only rely on himself. His business also depended on this group. Perhaps only these people could slowly survive. Never underestimate this seemingly foolish Jew. The power of culture, for example, many Chinese families have been telling their children from a young age that you need to study hard and find a stable job in the future. I don't ask you to be rich or great. Phoenix Schools and Civ Society. But if you live in a Jewish household, your mother might have been nagging you since childhood that you should go into business and make big money when you grow up. Buy low and sell high. Don't work hard for others. And I had a Jewish colleague before who said his mom had always instilled this in him since he was little. You can imagine how much influence this kind of sweet talk can have on a person. What does this lead to? Elites will always put entrepreneurship and business first, of course. This kind of self-interest comes first. Attitude, perhaps, may indeed provoke a lot of resentment, but it is indeed very successful in the worldly sense. For instance, in the year 2014, the percentage of Americans with an annual salary over 100,000 was 19%, whereas among the Jewish population, the percentage of those with an annual salary over 100,000 reached 44%. This is the highest among all religious groups. Go help. Whether in the United States or Israel, you think the Jews finally have a chance to band together. This desire to make money and take risks, coupled with the government's push, will lead to a large number of social elites heading. This path will be successful in one go.
Please feel free to like,
this point
subscribe,
is
share,
left.
and
It's
support
impossible
Big
to
Mirror
clean
and
up.
Column.
And it's not just about the talent currently in Israel. Jews from all over the world will continue to return to this place. As I said back in Israel, Jews from all over the world have the unrestricted right to return to Israel and become the state of Israel. Congratulations. Speaking of which, there's a key event around the early 90s when the Soviet Union dissolved, leading to what happened afterwards. 1 million Jews, one after another, swarmed to Israel, accounting for about 20% of the population at that time. And this was not over yet, Israel. It was not only new immigrants, but also really good at giving birth.
What?
When I was wandering around in the US, I often saw a group of Jews, a father, a mother, along with a line of children and baby carriages. And they all wear that little round hat like a lute. Thank
What are you building? What physical
It's not
objects
just
do you
about
have?
taking the kids out for a stroll. And there's another example. When I first started working, next to me was a French Jew who had 9 children. All this. I was very shocked at the time, and he told me this is very normal among Jews. Of course, I emphasized that what I said is rational. I was very shocked. Of course, not every household gives birth to 8 or 9 children. Let's look at the data. Israel's fertility rate is 3.0. On average, each woman has to have 3 children. This is leading by a large margin among all OECD countries. Most of the Bada countries have few, with a score over 2. Now look at this. It's Israel's population structure chart. Good guy. Such a perfect isosceles triangle, such a robust number of newborns.